Good evening, ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties. This is Alex, coming at you from the underworld, and welcome back to another episode of... This weekend, before I start my book review lineup of Christmas-themed horror, Connie has returned as my special guest as we recently buddy read Lost Souls by Poppy Z. Brite. Now, before I get started, I would just like to note that we buddy read this with our good online friends Hanny and Rooftop, which, thanks to Rooftop recommending this, I feel like I've completed a rite of passage because it feels like I've now read the most infamous books that Brite is known for. Which, if you're unfamiliar with Brite's work, this video is totally going to shine some light on that. But at the same time, for those who are familiar with the work of Brite, I would definitely include alongside Lost Souls other books like Exquisite Corpse and Drawing Blood. And after reading these three books, I honestly feel like they should be held as the gateway drug for anyone who wants to get into gay goth horror literature. But anywho, without me getting too far ahead of myself, let's see what's been new with Connie.
Hey guys, I'm so excited to be back. Thank you for having me back.
Of course, it's always good to have you.
Thank you. I'm really excited to get into this read. I really loved it. It's my first vampire novel to read, so I'm really excited. It's very special. It's been pretty much the usual with me. Work, home, been a little hectic, but I got all my Christmas stuff out, been doing my Christmas shopping. As you guys can imagine, Ben is so excited for Christmas. And yeah, that's pretty much the usual with me.
Awesome. Well, aside from you having your vampire cherry popped, we would like to thank Rooftop for recommending this to us, as we had a really great time reading this, and we would also like to thank Rooftop and Hanny for buddy reading this with us, because we had a lot of great discussions. So if either of you are watching, we hope you enjoy this review. But without further ado, let's head off to New Orleans and see what it's like to party when you're a creature of the night.
Ooh.
Lost Souls by Poppy Z. Brite opens up during Mardi Gras and introduces a young girl by the name of Jessie who visits a local bar because she's heard it's a vampire hangout. And while she's wanted to become a creature of the night for quite some time, one evening she finally meets a group of vampires whose leader's name is Zilla, which, upon them living it up, Zilla impregnates her with his child, and when he's done, he leaves her high and dry. Then, come 9 months later, after she goes into labor, she dies during giving childbirth.
Following the birth of Jesse's son, the bar owner takes him up north to get him out of New Orleans. And once they arrive in Maryland, he leaves the baby on the doorstep with a note that says, his name is Nothing, care for him, and he'll bring you luck. Now from there we move forward 15 years where Nothing has been living with his adoptive parents. And while he feels like he doesn't fit in, he decides that he's going to run away to Missing Mile, North Carolina, where he can meet and find this indie band he idolizes called Lost Souls.
Yet, on Nothing's journey of finding himself, he encounters the same group of vampires who were present on the night of his conception. Then, as he continues to travel with them, dark secrets of Nothing's past comes to light, and he is thrown into a hedonistic world of murder and forbidden lust. Lost Souls by Poppy Z. Brite was published in 1992. After its release, the Horror Writers Association and the LGBTQ+ organization known as the Lambda Literary Awards both nominated Lost Souls for Best First Novel. Yet before Lost Souls was a novel, it began as a novella that Brite wrote during 1987 through 1988. This was titled The Seed of Lost Souls. In 1999, Subterranean Press released a hardcover chapbook of this novella, which was illustrated by Dame Darcy.
Facts! Here's some things you may not know about Poppy Z. Brite. Poppy Z. Brite, who is now known as Billy Martin, had previously explained in an interview conducted by Ryan Graves that although he's proud of Lost Souls, when an author releases a vampire story as a first novel, readers expect the author to only write vampire fiction. However, Brite isn't interested in revisiting that subject. When asked how the LGBTQ community responded to Brite's gay characters, he explained that for the most part, gay readers have complimented his sex scenes as realistic and erotic, and they like that his characters aren't stereotypes. Throughout his career, Brite explained the most treasured fan mail has come from young gay readers who expressed his books made them feel less alone or it gave them courage to come out. In an interview with Nancy Kilpatrick with the Horror Interview, Brite explained that he was burnt out on vampires after he wrote Lost Souls. Adding to this burnout was the publicity that followed, as well as the people who explained to him during signings and parties that they were vampires. And when asked how he felt about being compared to Anne Rice, Brite replied, "It's inevitable but unfair to both of us. Rice has single-handedly changed the course of an entire subgenre of horror. That's wonderful, but it's not my goal. I don't want to make a career out of one kind of monster."
Now that we have that covered, it's time to move on to the spoiler section. Which, if you haven't read this book before, we're about to reveal some things that could ruin the experience for you. So, if you would like to click away, all you have to do is scroll down to the comments, and you'll see that we have a pinned comment at the top. If you click on the timestamp in that comment, it will direct you away from the spoilers and bring you to the thoughts section. Now, you only have 17 seconds to do this. So...
Go!
Since everyone's had the opportunity to click away, we would like to talk about a few of the more intense moments of this book. First off is the scene when Jessie gives birth to nothing.
Oh, yeah.
Now, leading up to this, Jessie had had sex with Zilla, and she became pregnant with his son. After that, he ended up leaving her to fend for herself. But because of Christian being the responsible vampire, he allowed her to live at the bar and do odd jobs. But come the night of her giving birth, she bleeds out everywhere and dies. Which we eventually discover that any woman who is pregnant with a vampire child will die during that pregnancy or while in labor. What I love about this work is how Brite sets it apart from all other vampire fiction. Like, under this scenario, it's impossible to make a human a vampire. And as we read, we discover that vampires are their own breed, and the only way they can populate is through procreation. So, in other words, if a vampire bites you, you're not going to change. It's just going to suck you dry and toss your husk aside. Or if you become pregnant with a vampire fetus, yeah, you're still not going to change because you have a vampire growing inside of you. No, that fetus is going to eat through your womb, then you'll die. And obviously, despite if the mother is human or not, the only way to potentially save a mother from her vampire offspring is to give her an abortion. Which, due to what happens to Jessie and Anne, as well as the character in the story that Arcady speaks of, I can't help but think Brite was commenting on a woman's right to have a safe and legal abortion.
Next up is Lane's death. It's a hard one. Prior to this, nothing but hitchhiking. He ends up getting picked up in the van with the vampires. They're riding along. They give him drugs. He has sex with Zilla. And if you've been paying attention, Zilla is Nothing's biological father. And I'm going to give you a minute to process that if you need to. But after that happened, they eventually pull over in a field where nothing ends up picking up the opium they have been smoking. And here's where the others started realizing nothing's not just a regular teenage boy. Now, he seems to be a vampire like them. Because when they had gave him a bottle of blood, he chugged it. It didn't seem to make him gag. It didn't seem to affect him in any negative kind of way. In fact, it seemed to kind of revive him. Well, come the next day, Zilla and the gang decide to pick up a hitchhiker to see what Nothing will do. And lo and behold, the hitchhiker they pick up is Lane, the boy who was earlier revealed to have a crush on Nothing. They're reunited, and Lane explains that he decided to run away after Nothing left because nothing was in there for the town for him. He didn't like it there, and he really just wanted to be with Nothing. He loved Nothing. So, they're having their heartfelt reunion, and all of a sudden, Malachi and Twig, they tackle Lane. Zilla gets his legs. Now he's overpowered, he's outnumbered, scared, I'm sure, and they just start beating on him. Now, Nothing's over there. Against his better judgment, he realizes, he's being drawn to the blood being shed and everything, and unable to restrain himself, stop himself, he ends up crawling on top Lane, ripping out his jugular and feeding on him. This moment really got to me because here we got this kid who obviously loves Nothing, genuinely likes and cares about him, ran away from home just hoping to find Nothing, not knowing if he ever even would find him. And he was so happy when he found him. So happy. And to see that happiness broke my heart. Because he was so scared, begging for his life, not understanding what was happening. It was just horrible. It was pitiful. And this scene was really gory too. Like really gory, which by the way the book is full of, and this also for me it stood out because this moment, as brutal as it was, I think it was a turning point for Nothing because this is the moment I think that he really realized what he was.
Yes.
He realized what he was and he just went with it. And this is the moment too, like I felt for Nothing. Up to that point, I still did at the end of the book, but this is the one moment in the book where I was like, damn, Nothing, that's cold, dude.
Next up is the home invasion scene.
Ooh.
Which, at this point, Nothing and the other vampires have arrived in Missing Mile, and because of there being an address on the inside of the cassette slipcover of the Lost Souls album, they have been able to walk right up to Ghost and Steve's front door. But the thing is, they discover the front door is locked, and Molokai finds a way to sneak in through an open window.
Yeah.
And even though Nothing feels like they shouldn't enter because it's wrong, he goes on inside and finds his way to Ghost's bedroom, which, because of Ghost being in tune with the supernatural, this causes him to bolt up from his sleep and shout Nothing's name. Meanwhile, this shout wakes Steve up and it alerts the other vampires. So, while the other vampires are trampling down the hall, Steve grabs his Louisville Slugger to cause some damage. And once Steve goes into the hallway, he bashes Zilla in the face with the bat. Then he throws Zilla into his sidekicks and he hauls ass into Ghost's bedroom. Which, after he locks the door, this is when he discovers that Nothing is in the same room with them. And even though he thinks Nothing means to hurt them, Nothing does confirm that he is a fan of their music and he means them no harm. Well, after the vampires break in, they hold Steve down with the intent to kill. But Nothing saves the day because he rams into Zilla and he demands they not be harmed. So, because of Nothing standing his ground and due to Zilla being as banged up as what he is, the vampires leave. Which, this is when Steve realizes that Nothing had been releasing the pheromones of a childhood that's been lost. Aside from this moment keeping me on the edge of my seat, I now see that in the horror genre, guys by the name of Steve kick ass with baseball bats.
Yeah.
Which, if you're a fan of Stranger Things, I'm sure you caught that. But anywho, I really love how Nothing stood up to Zilla here, because Zilla had been manipulating Nothing nonstop with jealousy and just screwing with his head and being in control. And so it was really toxic. And it really made me happy to see that Nothing wasn't the type of character who allowed himself just to continuously be run over nonstop. Also, when Steve said that Nothing was releasing pheromones of a childhood lost, all I wanted to do was just jump through this book and coddle that poor little baby bat and let him know everything was going to be so much better in time. Because, as I'm sure we can all agree, the idea of losing your innocence and childhood sucks. Which, to make this hit even harder, Brite describes this as being like cigarette smoke and baby powder, lost toys and eyeliner, torn black lace and nursery rhymes, and this dank smell of club restrooms haunted by the breath of vomit. And just how this is all described as being the innocence lost of Nothing. It was just honestly the knife being twisted in my ribs.
And last is Zilla'S Death. Now, before all this went down, it had been stressed that if you care for Nothing, he would bring you luck. Now, throughout the book, it always seemed like Zilla had such a toxic nature toward Nothing, to the point where Nothing had told him, "You're just treating me like a sex slave and a lapdog, and I'm not taking it no more." So prior to the finale, after the vampires feed on Jessie's dad, they end up getting really sick because her dad had cancer. And while they are at their weakest, Ghost and Steve end up tracking them down to the room where Nothing was born. And when they get in there, shit goes down. It goes down because Steve ends up killing Christian thinking he's Zilla, which this wakes Nothing up. And Zilla just goes on the attack, but Steve and Ghost end up overpowering him and finally put Zilla in his grave. You know, all this has happened. Nothing's sitting there. He's freaking out. He's in shock. He tells him he can make Malachi and Twig kill Steve. Well, Ghost said, "You're going to go through me first." And Nothing's like, "No," because, you know, he held Ghost in such high regard. He tells them to go. So they ran. They book it out of there like the smart people they are, headed back to Missing Mile. Well, eventually they end up getting a postcard from Nothing that tells him as long as he's alive, they will be safe. Y'all, when Zilla finally got his ass got, I clapped, I danced, I cheered. Zilla was such an awful character. He really, really was. He killed on a whim, without remorse. He went around impregnating women, knowing what's going to happen to him. He manipulated his son and was just an all-around douchebag. The action behind the fight scene, let me tell you. When Zilla came up and started fighting Steve, I couldn't look away. And when Ghost came up and stabbed him in the head and slit his throat, the world just felt good again because it was down one less asshole. You know what I mean? And I loved how the next morning when Malachi and Twig came to, Nothing just exerted his dominance and became the new leader of the group. And to be honest, it really was, I think, the final step from his boyhood to manhood.
Yes. Yes.
I think you're right, Connie. Meow.
Meow.
We would like to take this opportunity to bitch.
And I would like to take the time to talk about that fool Anne. She is a twit, a two-timing twit at that. I mean, first she cheats on Steve, and then she cheats on Elliot with Zilla. Like she's some kind of fool. I mean, I know he bewitched her, but she's still an idiot. And then the little hussy gonna run around chasing him after he done made it clear, baby daddy don't want nothing to do with you. Nothing to do with you. Girl, have some self-respect. I'd be damned if I run around chasing after a man he done made it perfectly clear he ain't done anything to me. Take a hint. Although I will say, I felt bad about how she died. And, about the rape and everything. Because even though she was an idiot, she didn't deserve that.
No, she didn't.
She didn't deserve that. And I will say she was good to Ghost.
She was.
She was good to Ghost.
She was a very conflicting character.
She was.
Like, there was moments where I really liked her, then there was other times where I'm like, get a damn grip, girl.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as who I would like to bitch about, I was honestly tied between Steve and Zilla.
Oh, yeah.
Because let's get real. Steve is not a saint whatsoever, and there were times I wanted to slap the ever-loving living piss out of him. But there's actually one character in this story who's worse than Steve, because unlike Steve, who actually shows remorse, Zilla has no remorse whatsoever.
None, nothing.
He's living for himself. Zilla ain't nothing but an egotistical, sociopathic piece of shit who reminds me of an ex-boyfriend who was equally just as crappy. Like, as far as all the crap Zilla does, he impregnates women left and right, then leaves them high and dry to deal with this vampire baby on their own, knowing they're going to die. Then, aside from that, he manipulates and gaslights Nothing. He tries to separate Nothing from anyone Nothing wants to have a relationship with. And then the cherry on the cake is when Zilla finds out Nothing is actually his blood son, and they have been banging this whole time. And Nothing is just like, what? Like, what the hell?
Right.
And Zilla's sick ass is like, oh, well, this just made the sex even that much better. No joke. The moment I saw this skid mark ooze onto the page, I was like, yeah, this bastard is gonna burn my ass. And I wasn't wrong. And when he finally had his shit handed to him, I was so damn happy because I was like, thank God. Now, Nothing can finally have a chance at life without this son of a bitch trying to micromanage his every damn move. Lost Souls by Poppy Z. Brite was beautifully written. However, this was perhaps the most depressing book I've ever read. Even still, that doesn't mean this was a bad book.
Right. Overall, this gothic classic presents strong characters that we quickly became invested in and presented themes such as women's rights, abusive relationships, coming of age, and much more.
Character-wise, this book did present us with some complex personalities, such as Steve and even Nothing. But opposing them, we did have some characters that were more black and white, like Zilla and Ghost.
Right.
And because of the life and realism that Brite quickly breathed into this cast, we saw early on that this was going to be a book that gave us some very iconic antagonist and protagonist.
Also, we really loved how the book stressed how Nothing's name means that it's a blank slate and he can write anything down on it that he wanted to. And it really gave him the room to make himself whatever he wanted. And we really never seen that done before, and we admired it.
Theme-wise, we feel this book comments on a woman's right to have a safe and legal abortion if that's what she wishes, which we really can't elaborate too much due to spoilers, but we can explain that the women in this book who become pregnant with vampire fetuses will either die during pregnancy or during childbirth. And even though the women in this book decide to keep their babies, it does stress the only way to potentially save them is for them to have an abortion.
And this book had a lot of abusive relationships in it. Certainly Anne and Steve are one example, but Zilla put the cherry on the cake, because he is a sexual predator who used gaslighting, manipulation, hedonism to keep his lover in low places. And certainly if you are someone who's been in a similar situation, you are going to start seeing red flags left and right. And if you are someone who's been trapped in a toxic relationship with someone like Zilla, this book might be too overwhelming for you.
But among all of the themes covered in this book, we feel like its main focus regards coming of age. which I'm really glad that Brite was brave enough to tackle the
Mm-hmm.
issues that were presented, because these were things that I had experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was experiencing them,
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't think anyone else was going through the same things I was,
Mm-hmm.
but of course they were.
Mm-hmm.
And this ended up just making me feel lost and confused. So even though what's presented in this book is not wholesome whatsoever, it is very real.
Mm-hmm. And Brite does a superb job showing how the instinct eventually does take over during those teenage years, and the person who is transitioning from childhood to adulthood is experiencing all these confusing emotions and desires as their body begins to change.
While those are some of the main subjects presented in this book, we also
Mm-hmm.
feel like the book comments on drug abuse, being comfortable with your own sexuality,
Mm-hmm.
and also the emotional dangers of incest. Overall, Lost Souls didn't gross me out, scare me, or creep me out. But there were quite a few times in this book where it felt like it hit a little too close to home,
Mm-hmm.
and there were also quite a few times that I really felt uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the book really didn't scare me or creep me out or anything. It was pretty gory though, and it kept me on my toes.
Lost Souls by Poppy Z. Brite is a nihilistic book that I had to put down multiple times because it became too emotional. Even
Mm-hmm.
still, I'm glad I read it with friends, and it was a book that I did enjoy because it touched me. So, if you're in the right headspace and you're looking for a vampire book that isn't afraid to push the envelope, then I highly recommend Lost Souls.
I agree. I highly recommend this book. It was such a great book. I really enjoyed it. It's so well written, really good characters, such a fun read to read with your friends. If you really like vampire stories, this is the book for you.
Well, now that we're done, I would just like to say thank you for coming back for this review.
Aw, thank you for having me back. I've
Of
really enjoyed it. It's been
course.
such fun. Really great
And
time.
I'm sure we're not going to have you back until after the new year.
Yeah.
I don't know what we're going to read, but I'm sure it's going to be something.
It's going to be great. It's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. Looking forward to it.
And since we're not going to see you until after the holidays, of course, I'm sure all of us hope that you have a good Christmas and New Year.
You too, and you too, all y'all out there as well. Happy holidays.
And also, you did a TikTok video regarding this book, which
I did.
by the way, we're going to leave you on this note with that video. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed that little skit, but now I would like to thank these amazing people for contributing to my Patreon account. As you can tell, some of the names listed here are creators, so be sure to check out their work. And if you would like to contribute to my Patreon as well, I have a link available in the description section of this episode, where for $5 a month I'll give you a shout out at the end of my videos, and if there's a certain profession you would like for me to tie to your name, just let me know and I'll include it. Also, I do have a $10 tier available as well, where for $10 a month, not only will you receive the shout out that you see here, but I do creepy photography on the side, so I'll send over one of my creepy photos at the beginning of every month. From there, you can print it off, do whatever you like. So if you're able to do this, that's awesome. If not, no sweat. I just hope you return to this channel so we can have a good time together. Also, if you would like to hit me up on social media, links to my Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram are all available in the description section of this episode. And if you have not subscribed to this channel, be sure to subscribe and click that notifications bell, because I have more book reviews coming in the near future. So until we see each other again, I hope you have a great week and sweet nightmares.